I had a profound transformation this week, but as is with most spiritual healings, the work really started months ago. I found myself in a situation where I was literally running, aka fight or flight, away from a workplace after a confrontation. My heart was racing and I couldn't think straight, and I headed to the Lake Michigan lakeshore for its calming effect. But it was probably an hour before I felt regulated enough to return. And I don't even know that because the only thing I had were the crystals in my pocket. After fully coming back to myself, maybe days later, I realized that this life or death feeling that I had in my body was from being falsely accused. While my logical brain knew that I was not in any physical harm, my body did not. I came to realize that this is most likely my witch wound. The witch wound is a metaphorical term for the collective trauma that happened during the burning times, the 300-year period where spiritual women were persecuted for their beliefs. This persecution for witchcraft can create deep-seated fear of being seen, fear of speaking your truth, shame, and ultimately it's suppressing your power. Although this just came to the surface within the last half a year or so, I had one instance a long time ago where I had this visceral body reaction to this one person that I had to have communications with that was kind of a vendor of the company I worked for. And I would just get physically sick and shaking and everything. And looking back, I can totally see that he had this false accusation type approach to me and the work I was doing. And I had no idea what was causing such a physical reaction in my body at the time. It's the fear of literally being burned alive. So that's the witch wound. But once I was aware of it, I could see that thread woven through the fabric of my entire life. And just a couple of months later, I was presented with another opportunity to face false accusations. I literally said to myself, didn't I just go through this? Since discovering my witch wound last fall, I decided to face my fears head on by taking my personal spiritual stories online. As somebody that has acted in plays my entire life, I have no hesitation to stand up on a stage in front of hundreds of people, but there is something about sharing your inner spiritual gooey center is so vulnerable because of the witch wound. Since about March, I've been online learning to overcome this fear of being seen. But a couple weeks ago on the flower moon, I decided to release the witch wound, my fear of persecution, and my fear of being seen. I wrote all my fears out on paper, burned them, and washed the ashes down the sink, and I felt lighter. So this week, when it came to be the new moon, I decided I was going to write out my dream for what I did want my life to look like. I wanted to open my spiritual gifts even more and show up fully for the mission that I'm here for on earth at this time. And as luck would have it, Christma from Breaking Free offered me an opportunity to do 9D breath work for letting go. This was the third time I've done breath work, so I kind of knew what to expect. I was saying to this lady while I was waiting to check in that I was a little bit terrified and a little bit excited. What I didn't say was that I was preparing to release the witch wound, the fear of persecution and the fear of being seen, and calling in my full power. During the beginning, I was getting used to the holotropic breathing. It's one breath into your belly and then one into your lungs and then one out. So it takes a little while to get into that rhythm. My hands began to tingle, which is a sure sign it's working. And I was surprised how soon the tears started rolling, soaking my eye mask. I couldn't stop shaking and wiggling and moving my body. Everything felt uncomfortable. I was definitely moving something. The emotions were coming through me in waves, like I was always on the brink of breaking out sobbing. Eventually, I came to a vision of being burned alive, the same vision that used to haunt my nightmares as a child. This kind of went in and out for a while as I moved through those emotions. And then I heard that I would rise like a phoenix from the ashes, that the fire was transforming me, and that I would use the fire to transform others. It's interesting to note that I am a Holy Fire Reiki master. I had processed being actually burned alive and the emotions with that, and then felt this strong pull in my solar plexus, followed by tingling and pulsing moving through my root chakra. The sensation was uncomfortable, and I started sweating buckets like I was burning from the inside out. It was during this time that Christma came over and started pulling and swaying my legs like she knew I was moving something out. Then the energy started moving up through my other chakras. Looking back now, I think that maybe it moved easily through areas that are open and was working in areas that were blocked. So the next pit stop was my solar plexus, which has always given me a little bit of trouble. And the energy burned away all of my self-doubt. Next, moving up into my chest area, which I initially thought was my heart chakra, but it was more like pressure in my shoulders, and I kind of think it was probably getting blocked in my throat chakra, which totally makes sense. At this time, Chrisma came back and knowingly moved some energy out of my chest area. Even as she had left me, I could still feel the energy pulsing away out the way she had pushed the energy. I definitely found my conscious self wanting to rush this and get it over with, but knew that I had to be patient and let it unfold as it needed to. When the energy moved up to my head, I knew that it was working in my third eye, and my head started moving in kind of a figure eight pattern. My body had been moving and releasing the whole time, and now the rest of my body was calm. It was just my head that was moving. And I think it easily moved out of my crown chakra. I think maybe this whole experience was a Kundalini awakening, which is a concept from yoga and Hinduism that refers to this energy that starts in the base of the spine and moves up. It was definitely something. I heard you are now a clear channel, a vessel, which is interesting because every morning I set the intention to be a vessel, a clear channel for source energy. I also heard for thine is the kingdom. At the time, I felt like this meant that the power was within me. I definitely felt like I had an awakened power within me at that time. The breathwork was coming to an end, and I was in a state of pure bliss. After being so uncomfortable and wiggly the whole time, I was very calm, and I was getting the purple swirlies behind my closed eyelids, which is kind of a norm for me in meditation. But considering what I had just been through, I decided to play with it. I haven't always been visual, and so I asked for a clairvoyant symbol. I went back and forth several times and finally determined that I was getting a sailboat, which is one of the only symbols that I wrote down in my psychic journal about a year ago for clear sailing. So I love that. You know, at the end of a breathwork session, you usually go around the room and talk about your experiences. And it's interesting to note that of the 9 people there with the exact same circumstances and stimuli had completely different experiences. It's kind of a good reminder that everybody is living their life from their own perspective, and it can be radically different from yours. I've definitely had breathwork sessions that were less transformative, but I think what I had been led up to over the last 6 months had me primed and ready for this release. In general, I'm a big cheerleader of letting shit go. So if you're ready to let shit go, Krishna from Breaking Free can definitely help you with the 9D breath work. You know, I'm not trying to prove anything to anyone, but if you're on the path, I'm here to light the way.